Welcome. I'm Brad, your prescription, your transformation, real people, real success, and real conversations. And so we go into a new realm of broadcasting here together with Star Worldwide. Really excited about that. We got some new faces here. And most importantly, I'm very excited to be talking to Carole Forest once again. Ready for your spiritual journey to your inner love. And I've had the great fortune to have gone on a wonderful trip to the South Pacific last month, 3 weeks traveling to New Zealand, South Island, North Island, and Vanuatu. And it was quite an experience. 30 or 40 transformational leaders traveling together, having some incredible experiences, lots of growth, but also wonderful humanitarian projects that we participated in. But most importantly, the ability to learn, to be exposed to other cultures and other ways of thinking, so that we can expand ourselves, we can expand our humanness, and then become much more who we really want to be in life. And this is critical because one of the things that, as humans, what inspires us most, what fulfills us the most, are two things. And these are things that we understand from human behavior psychology. After we satisfy our primary needs of certainty and variety, love, connection, and significance, the spiritual needs get satisfied, and those are growth and contribution. And that's what this trip was all about. Live Your List Productions and Sprite Loriano Global, these are the people that put it all together, and bringing people from all over the world to travel to New Zealand to give messages to other people, which actually can be seen on Facebook. Some of them I've already posted on my page, and incredible talks from some incredible people. But today, I'm delighted to be talking to an amazing human being from whom I've learned so much. And it's really about, who is that authentic person that we really can be? How is it that this inner critic is defying all the wonders and dreams that a child has? And this allows us as humans to really express ourselves and experience life the way that we really deserve to. And I'm so delighted to be talking to Carole because she's spearheading this with so many different groups out there so that we can find our true selves and find that inner love that we all desire. Carole, welcome.
Thank you, Bart. It's my pleasure to be here today.
So thank you. And I'm curious, and let's jump into this New Zealand trip. And because I know you've had some remarkable experiences and remarkable distinctions throughout and transformations. But I'd like to start off because we did talk about this beforehand. But what was your intention? What did you think your intention was going to New Zealand? And let's start off with that.
Heading on this trip, I definitely knew that it would be life-changing. I knew ahead of time. And because the theme that I was talking about when we were in Dunedin was on moving from judgment to compassion, I also knew that everything that would show up throughout the trip would help me see a deeper knowing and understanding of that whole concept. And the reason I knew that is because even prior to the trip, I was already seeing that. I was already seeing evidence and examples and opportunities to just recognize, where do I still hold judgment for others? Where do I still hold judgment for myself? And where do I still judge circumstances in my life that are just not good enough, or I wish weren't there, rather than seeing the beauty and the learning that's available to all of us in all situations? So when we headed that way, and I knew we were traveling with 38 plus people, I was prepared to be shown every color in the spectrum of where judgment can show up and where every opportunity for compassion simultaneously shows up. I've traveled with groups in the past, and much smaller groups, but what I've always seen as a common thread throughout is that the people that show up are deliberately being brought into your life stream as orchestrated in a way that perfectly aligns all of us to learn and to grow in the highest capacity possible. So here's how I would explain it is like, if you have a group of 15, or in our case, we had a group of 38, every single person on that trip, I could, if I stopped, to attribute it to others in my life back home. So essentially, it becomes a group that represents the microcosm of the macrocosm. And so in each interaction and in each exchange lies a beautiful lesson that I could then take back home and apply. It's like it's your learning grounds. It's like school of through travel and with a transformational experience, and then going back home and being able to see where that just shows up in our everyday life. And another thing too that I found really cool traveling with groups like this is that initially when you start doing these trips, you might be triggered by an individual, and your initial response is to try to avoid, because we get drawn to what's easier and what feels good. So we'll maybe like gravitate to the people we get along with and click with, and it's an easier relationship. That's great. I think those relationships should be in our life and do exist, and it's a beautiful gift. But what I've come to see is that the people that trigger me the most are the ones I have the most to learn from. And it's not necessarily that they would be my teacher. No, it's more so my perception of the situation or of their behavior or of their way of acting allows me to look at aspects of myself that I may want to change or improve or grow in, and say, why is that triggering me? Why is that bothering me to that degree? Why would what that person does have that reaction from me? And so it's an opportunity for deepening our own personal experience, deepening an understanding of why we react the way that we do. And in that is an opportunity to feel compassion for ourselves, because sometimes, especially in the world of self-development, it can be easy to catch ourselves being hard on ourselves for not being better than we are. That like, I should know better by now. I shouldn't be judging. I shouldn't be triggered by this individual. Like, I've been working on myself for X amount of years. Why would this still bother me? But a deep, like, rather than asking those questions, the questions to ask is like, is that okay that I would react that way? And perhaps there's a deeper reason for that to be triggering me to that degree. And from there we can grow. But the judgment is what keeps us stuck. The judgment is what causes us suffering. In fact, it's like, I'll give an example of a headache. There were years where I would experience migraines on a regular basis. I know now why. It was completely emotional related, and it's cool to be able to recognize that now, because I could help other people with those same painful occurrences of migraines. But in one of the most painful moments, I just experimented with it and thought, what if rather than being in wishing it away and obsessing about saying, I wish it was gone, I can't stand this, and like thinking, like removing myself from the present, because essentially I can't wait for the pain to be gone, is what would it look like in a space where I don't judge the headache, that it's just a sensation like any other. And what happened is not that the pain disappeared, but the judgment, when that was removed, it allowed me to be able to hold the space for the pain. And rather than it being like a weighing on me of suffering, it was pain. And so that was a very vivid experiment for me to have, because I realized in all other situations that the worst suffering came as a result of me judging either the situation, judging myself, and sometimes others, but it's mostly the other two that are worse that cause us a lot of suffering. So applying that to traveling with this group of people is like, I looked for opportunities to just sit with someone that maybe I wouldn't normally have gone out of my way to sit with, and like to hear their story and to ask questions about, like, deep, real questions. And certainly the setting for this trip was all around that, because we were just constantly sharing stories and being vulnerable. But I'm going to keep talking about it if you don't stop me.
No, this is great. This is very insightful. And I don't know, what do you guys think? Any thoughts or insights or comments?
I have a question. When you were talking about pain as just being like a sensation that you have to feel, and it's kind of when we talk about like in a lot of our college courses and things that we take at school, they teach us a lot about how you need one side to have the other. And I was just kind of going to ask you about that. Like, do you ever think about like, if I didn't have this pain, then I wouldn't know what it would feel like to not be in pain or not having that hurting? Like, do you go through that mental process of thinking of that, or is it more so?
Yeah, I want to know the answer to that one, Carole.
Well, certainly there have been periods in my life where I would justify very complicated and challenging situations by saying, well, it's a good thing I'm going through this because I'll appreciate so much more when I'm not in suffering, or when I'm not in the thick of this difficult situation. But I think at the end of the day, that's all it was a just to help me cope, knowing that there would be an extreme. Even with the migraine example, it's like the next day or days later when it would be gone, I certainly never appreciated my health and my well-being more than I did in that moment once the pain was gone. So it's not about, when we remove judgment, the pain still remains and we still don't like it. It's still not enjoyable. It's not like all of a sudden we're like, oh, I love this sensation. No, it's like, it's still pain is pain. But kind of like getting to a place of recognizing, for me, like I know for myself that I came here on earth to experience all of it. Like I don't want to not feel it all. I want to feel all of it. And there was a time in my life where I tried to avoid so much of the ones that were uncomfortable. And when I was able to make that transition of recognizing that if I just didn't judge the discomfort, then it made such a difference. It was like my perception of the discomfort became more of a, like, okay, this is an experience. This is a sensation. This is something that I get to feel. And would I want to feel nothing so that I would not feel pain? Heck no. Like there's so many times in my own life, and when I see with clients as well, is that we want to protect ourselves from the pain, but when we build these thick walls around our hearts to protect ourselves from getting hurt, we're also keeping love out. We're keeping all the joys, all the deep connections, all the vulnerability, and not just the giving of it, but the receiving of it. And that is the gift of all gifts. Like there were, at one point during our trip, when we met with the Aboriginal people of New Zealand, the Waitaha people, part of their tradition is story sharing. And so we would gather in this room that they consider very sacred, and we would be holding a stick and take turns and like the talking stick, I guess. And we would share either the insight that we had that morning or that day or during the trip, or just a general share. And just the amount of heart connection, like with human beings that you just met like 5 days ago, and you're now just cracking your heart wide open and showing either your deepest joys or your deepest pain. And at the end of the day, both are just so amazing. Like both just like touch you to the core and make you realize we're all in this together. Like as much as it's so easy for us to see our differences as human beings, in those kind of conversations, it reminded me just of how similar we all are, how connected we all are, and how we really have so much more in common than we ever consider. And this was people from all over the world, right? It wasn't just like from one select group of people that have had similar environments, but even there, that just doesn't even exist, because even the person next door has had a different life experience. But what connects us is when we allow ourselves to be seen.
Right. I was going to ask, you talk a lot about happiness and pain and the difference between those two. How do you feel about feelings of like fear? Does that still kind of strike you, or have you learned to kind of move past things that you used to be afraid of?
I love your question because I've done a whole workshop on fear. And in fact, it was called Living Life Free from Fear. Now, the title is like not really indicative of what ended up coming of it, because fear, again, is just another experience. Now, and of course, we could talk about like there's situations where you need it. You come face to face with a bear, like that common example. You need fear to know to get yourself into safety. But again, it all boils down to just recognizing that fear comes with the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when we're so familiar with something and comfortable with something, well, fear doesn't come into play. But the unknown shows up, and then fear wants to make its presence known. And so, again, the shift that we're all invited to do is to say, do we try to avoid fear, or do we just recognize it as the discomfort of not knowing, or the discomfort of the unfamiliar? And
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Like that's a judgment in itself. Like, do you think that fear comes from judgment?
Certainly, I feel fear with judgment. Like if you put both
well,
together.
let me answer that one for you, because I think you're spot on, Carole, when you say, fear is really about the unknown. I mean, the way that I equate so many problems that we have today, whether it's fear, whether it's procrastination, whether it's indecisiveness, really comes down to one thing: lack of clarity. Is you just don't know what you need to know so that you can make a smart decision for yourself. What then happens is that then after that, in a way, and that's perhaps the answer to your question, is then we can judge ourselves by the way we respond to that, whether it's inaction or a feeling of weakness. And that's where the judgment, where in response to the way that we respond to our fear. And so within that, I mean, within every experience that we have, there's an emotion. And it's a matter of, whether you want to or are able to embrace basically who you are as a human in that very moment. I think that's what you're saying, Carole. It's just being able to be your authentic self, regardless of what shows up. Because there's nothing wrong with you as a human being. I just wrote a piece that about our humanness, and one of the things that people use, they use all these different cliches, like the one that you brought up earlier. You have to balance the good with the bad. Well, that's absolute nonsense. I mean, you ask anybody, do you want pain and suffering? And they'll say no. Will they be perfectly happy, with just great times? Of course they will. It doesn't mean that they die, in life. It doesn't mean that they lose the passion. There has to be some sort of psychological tension for us to be able to expand and grow. But that can come in many different ways, and it doesn't necessarily have to be painful. And so, the other one is that says, I'm perfectly imperfect. Well, that's absolute nonsense too. That's again a way of kind of sort of what you're saying earlier, is coping with the norm. And I like what you said earlier on, and Carole, when you were talking about a talk that you'd given sometime, that people are either sucked into the culture norm and kind of dying there if they're aware of it, or they're holding on to dear life to stay out of it. And it's just the way that we choose to cope rather than choosing to be ourselves.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you talk about college or university, because I was just telling Bart before the show that I had the privilege of speaking to 3 different university classes before our trip to New Zealand. And what's interesting is the majority of the people I've been working with for the last few years has been more individuals like midlife, like where they just recognize that they've gone through this cyclical cycle of just doing what's expected of them, or just conforming, like Bart said, to society's expectations or the people around them, and compromising who they are as in the process. And so they come to me because they're like, we know that we can't keep going, that we can't keep doing what I've been doing. And essentially what they're asking is to be shown how to remember who they truly are, because at one point they forgot, they just plain forgot. And so when I was speaking to the university students, I realized in that exchange just how powerful this age group is, because it's really at that point where most are on the cusp of either conforming, giving up because you just held on for so long, in saying, I do know this to be true, and what I feel inside is real, and I don't understand this, and this isn't, I don't accept this either. But everyone else is just like walking blindly, is just into, and there's just so much questioning at that period, more so in today's society, that age group, I feel, is holding on to it a lot more and not giving in. But it's certainly, they're all at the cusp of either continuing to grasp their knowing, their inner knowing, or they end up just giving up because it's been too hard to hold on for so long, or they've been told that they're not good enough, or you've been told that you don't know better, or you've been told that you can't trust your inner knowing or your intuition, and that you should go in that profession because it makes more money, or you should. And in your heart, you know that that's not what you're called to do, or to be, or to say. And it was just amazing and magical to have that exchange with them, because I could just see in their face, they were like, like relieved to hear that, no, guess what? You are like perfect exactly as who you are. And like nobody else does. You're the only one that's privy to your own inner wisdom, your own ability to tap into what you're called to be. And don't forget that. Don't lose that, because it lit me up, because I was like, if more people could hear that and know that, and just be given permission to just fully show up as who you are, and unapologetically, like not compromising who you are, then you won't have to be 40 and then say, oh, what have I done the last 20 years? I tried to be what everyone else wanted me to be, and I've just, I was like, don't do it. So it was amazing. And even on this trip, I had a chance to get to know Bart's daughter, who's 20 years old, and she's just that light, like I see in the both of you. It's like just amazing. You could just still feel it in her, that she knows that what she's hearing on the outside is wrong, but it beats you down so much that it can be easy at one point to just say, like, throw in the towel. But I feel quite passionate about that. I find that the younger age group is really showing up even in my practice, where they're just wanting to be given permission and wanting to hear, no, I'm okay, and what I'm doing is right, and following my dreams and following my gifts and talents, even if it doesn't make sense up here. See, that's the thing, is like, it's not an intellectual process. When we walk into life with pure authenticity, it's coming from a deeper place of knowing, and you cannot rationalize it. You can't do a checklist of pros and cons. You just have to trust it and take the leap. And there's just so much magic that waits for you on the other side, but we're not given that information ahead of time. That's where the faith, whatever you want to call it, comes into play.
So I'm looking at both you guys there, and when Carole was saying, there's so much light in the younger people, I actually see light in you guys.
Oh, for sure.
And it's really cool to see that, because it kind of also gives us older people, if you will, kind of hope of the future, because we're transcending into a new era. And I believe it's an era of awareness and consciousness and connection, if you will, to more of a global way of thinking. And so my question for you two, because I'm very eager to hear, what is your experience? And I'd like to hear from both of you. What is your experience out there? I mean, do you feel that you are often challenged by the cultural norm around you that kind of, tends to hold you back? And no criticism on you, because I learned something about Australia. They call it the tall poppy syndrome. And the tall poppy syndrome is very simply this, is that you have a field of poppies, and when one poppy sticks up, the rest of the poppies just cut it down. And that's what happens in our society. But is that something that you guys are experiencing? Or is uniqueness and individuality something that's really well embraced? I'm kind of curious.
I think the biggest problem with our generation is definitely social media, because it's both a blessing and a curse. But social media, you can see all the major celebrities or pop stars or what they're doing and what the society norm is. And I feel like everyone around, no matter what age group, probably from like 10 to 20, feel like they have to live to that certain standard, which
Right.
in the long run makes you non-authentic and just makes you kind of blend into the rest of the crowd instead of just embracing your uniqueness and what you're good at in life.
Well, I'd say that it almost does the reverse too, because some people look at pop stars and they say like, oh, that's what like we all aspire to be and everything, and that's just not true. Not everyone aspires to do the same things. And the one thing that I see a lot from social media is when if you do want to be that person and you go to school and you say, I'm going to be a television producer one day, and then all of society is like, it just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It never happens.
Turned against
it can't
you.
happen. It turns against you. So it goes on both sides of the scale. And I think that's been really interesting to watch, and seeing that we have all the opportunities in the world. Like, we're going into college and already work at a radio station and have learned so much and seen so much in our lives that we know that other people didn't have the same opportunities to see. And I think if you can like take yourself and you know what you want to do in life and you keep taking those steps in the right direction, like was what Carole was saying, just believing in yourself and not letting other people have the power over you to say those things that you can't do it, then it pushes you to keep going.
Agree.
That's what we've experienced.
I love that.
But the one thing that you guys distinguish yourselves is that you've taken advantage of an opportunity that technically is available for everyone. Now, if everyone went for it, then it wouldn't be, of course. But obviously, anybody could have done what you did and found themselves, in a great spot. So, Carole, I mean, what would you tell them? Because these are our future whatevers. I'm not sure what to call it.
What I would tell them is thank you. Like, thank you for showing up as who you are. Thank you for being advocates for that. And the courage it takes to stand strong in knowing your own talents, your own gifts, and regardless of what society may say about it. I have kids that are my oldest is 21, and then I have a 20-year-old, and then I have a 17-year-old, and one's a musician, and another one's an actor, and the other one, like, a lot of creative energy in them. What I find amazing is meeting people like you, and then on the trip, Gabriella, and also we had a whole production team that was following us throughout the whole trip, doing like camera work and videography, and they're doing a documentary. And they were young, like they're total millennials. And just, I thank them. Like, I thanked all four of them just for what they represent, hope for my kids, that they do have a bright future to look forward to. That as much as I have heard conversations that do umbrella judgments on certain groups of people. In fact, there was one of the workshops I sat in on in New Zealand that was an epic. Like, it is led by a millennial, but he was talking about judgment of groups of people and how if you just categorize and assume that they're like this, they're like that, they're feeling entitled, and just have this blanket statement that says, oh, what is this world coming to? And he went on to show quotes from like BC, like hundreds of years BC and throughout history, from Plato to like different figures, like historic figures that would have made similar comments, like our young today are blah 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 blah. Like they're crossing their legs, they're like not being polite when they, what is this world coming to? So every generation has had that conversation going, and I just, when I hear it, I don't buy into it. And then when I meet people like you and the young crew that we had on our trip, I was moved to tears and went up to them and said, thank you. Like, thank you for representing what I know exists, because at the heart of your generation is an even stronger truth. And perhaps, I mean, I'd like to think maybe like we're contributing as well to not beat it out of, like, I try to not beat it out of my kids, like to really bring out their beauty and their unique individuality, and really see every single one of them as their own unique expression, and that they should not try to fit inside a box. Like, boxes are boring. Like, just yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. One of the best pieces of advice I'd say I ever got from someone was somebody told me this quote, and I don't know who it was from. It was anonymous, but basically it said that you have to remember that people aren't out to get you. Like, society isn't forming against you. Everybody is looking out for their individual uniqueness, and ideas collide, and it just happens in life. And you just have to remember that it's not like a direct attack, and it's not something that you have to like be afraid of or anything. And it was funny because we were just earlier about the word success and like what that means to different people, and that kind of reminded me of what you were saying, that everybody has like different goals in life, and you can't really judge people or say that, oh, they're not going to grow up and make as much money, so they're not this type of success, or they're not with someone right now, they're not successful that way or this way or that. Either way, everybody has their own goals and aspirations, and as long as they know what they want and they live up to it, then who's to say?
Absolutely. And I love the topic of success, because I've had multiple conversations on that theme, and asking the individuals that I was in conversation with, because they were concerned about their child. Like, I just want them to be successful. And so that's why I'm hard on him to get good marks in school. And that's why I'm hard on him to just blah, blah, blah. And I was like, how would you define success? Like, what in your eyes would equate that he's had a successful life? Is it the salary he ends up making, or the degrees that he has, or is it that he would find true happiness, like at the core, that he would find fulfillment at the end of the day in whatever work he does? And we can't know that. Like, even as parents, we can't know that for our kids. We can have ideas of different skill sets or talents that they're predisposed to having, or strengths, and we can encourage and give suggestions, but I think we do them a disservice if we impose our, like, living through our kids at the end of the day. Just let them.
That's really a key point that you say there, and I want to expand on it just a little bit. And actually, Tony Robbins just came out with a brilliant book, and if you haven't read it, absolutely is well worth reading. And it's called Shakable. It talks about wealth and how to define that wealth. And wealth, certainly by many people's standards, is amount of money that you have and the stature that you've acquired. And the problem with that is that you can never, ever achieve absolute fulfillment if that's the only thing that you focus on. And getting back to what Sedona was saying earlier on, is that as long as we compare ourselves to other people, we're never going to find that happiness, because once we've attained a certain standard, we're going to compare ourselves with somebody else.
Yeah.
And then again, as you also mentioned clearly, is that you actually don't know what's going on in their life. I mean, you're just seeing a small fraction of what their life is, but you have no clue what's going on outside of them. And so the real comparison that you want to make, the one that creates and generates not only fulfillment, but also wonderful growth, is you compare yourself to yourself. Where have you come from? Where are you going? And on that journey, and that's why I enjoy these talks so much, particularly with Carole, because it's your personal journey of becoming the best version of yourself. And I told her a statement the other day that she had to think about for a moment, and the same thing with myself when I first heard it. But hell on earth if I were ever to meet the man that I was meant to be. Think about that for a second. Hell on earth if I were ever to meet the man or woman that I was meant to be. Because if you meet that person and you haven't become that person, you've really shortchanged yourself in life. You've really held yourself back. And I think that arises from fear. People are there's a great quote from Tony Robbins, and obviously, I'm a Tony Robbins fan. The quality of life is, or life begins outside of your comfort zone, but the quality of life is the degree is directly proportional to the degree that you can live in the unknown, and that's where you grow. And if you go work out every single day, and you don't stretch yourself, you don't push yourself, you don't feel any kind of pain, you're not going to grow. You're just going to stay just exactly where you are. So pain is a part of life. Pain, in essence, is an indicator that you're alive. The only person that doesn't feel pain, they're dead. But suffering is a choice. And it all comes around to this. Happier people have more choices. You create more choice in life, then you can find more happiness. And when you just stick with one norm and realize that this is all that I have, and really getting down to the crux of what we're all talking about, is that if you can't find the alignment of who you really are inside, then you're never going to be happy. And that's what it's about. We have all these conversations about different cultures, different norms, different groups, whether you're Hispanic or whatever. It doesn't matter who it is. And a lot of political agendas are based on this. But that's the wrong conversation, because we're all human. And that's what I love about the Waitaha, because they're the traveling tribe. You look at their tribe. I mean, you have 100 people. I mean, if you're looking at 100 people just standing all next to each other, they all look totally different. And it's a worldly tribe. And so when we can just embrace all of that, then life is different. If we just find that alignment with who we are, no judgment. And the final thing I want to share with that is that when we judge people, we lose the ability to see their greatness. We lose the ability to see the greatness in ourselves. So,
Yeah,
Carole.
and I would say that applies so much to us, right? When we judge ourselves, we lose the ability to see our own greatness. And as a result, we keep ourselves small. And when we keep ourselves small, we can be trying to pull out the beauty and the greatness in others. Like for me with my kids, for so long, I wanted to just really nurture that part of them to stay alive. And at one point, I realized I wasn't doing that for myself. I was so busy making sure everyone else around me was taken care of that I was forgetting to nurture my own greatness. And so, yeah, that's been life-changing, because through my example, then they get to witness it firsthand. And I've had to make some really tough decisions and choices in my life, and to hear my 20-year-old son say, "Mom, I'm so proud of you," is like it helps me to see that it impacts.
You also had an interesting experience with your children, right? At one point, you were, as a mom, you managed them, if you will, in a certain way, and then you realized that wasn't working out.
Well, I think that throughout the years, I've been doing this for 21 plus years, and I've got a good group that I'm still raising. I think I just continuously have been evolving. And at the beginning, I was just really trying to get it right. I was really like reading all the books, the parenting books and psychology books, and just I wanted to give them the best. I mean, my intentions were good, but it took years of just pushing through, trying to control all of that so that I would get good outcomes, and getting to a breaking point to realize, no, this isn't working. It's really about being so present in each moment that you get guidance as to how to show up and how to be the best parent, the best friend, the best partner. It's really not, I mean, we could get some tips from books, but for me, it did me more harm than good. So I came to a point where I understood that if I was just present to them in the moment, then I would understand what was in the highest for them to hear. And so essentially letting go of the control and just really seeing it as a dance between my child and myself, and seeing that it's a beautiful relationship that they get to be an integral part of, not me trying to shape them to become someone at all. It's me recognizing that they are already beautifully shaped to become who they are here to be. So it's it shifted my parenting completely.
Well, the truth is that our children, all children, they're sponges. They're learning maniacs, especially early on in their life. And the best way that we learn is through modeling the behaviors of other people that we trust, that we love. And so I understood, many years ago, that my greatest teachers were actually my children, when I really allowed them to explore the world around them in the way that served them the best, but also gave them some guidance and the opportunities to question whatever it was that they were doing, rather than, handing down the hammer and saying, look, this is how you need to be, and which is how I was at first, as a father. But what's been exciting is to see how they've been able to evolve. Once in a while the hammer had to come down just because they were just out of control. But that's just, an appreciation of what it would be like when they're adults. I mean, it wouldn't be my hammer, it would be somebody else's. And so, but allowing them to appreciate and understand and then embrace the great characteristics and behaviors and aspirations of others, I think is critical. And the truth is that we can learn it from anyone. They can be our elders, but it could be also our youngsters. And what was great about, watching my daughter, my 20-year-old daughter, is seeing, what her aspirations are to become and how to change the world, which inspired me. And so it's really a matter of us being able to see what's working in other people's lives. And, you mentioned the word success earlier on. What is success? Well, success is simply the completion of a specific outcome. You've reached that outcome, whatever that is. And when we can define those outcomes for ourselves, that's great. But the real success in life is what I like to call divine happiness. And it's something we all desire. And the only way you can do that, and this is what Carole always talks about, is, you have to resolve whatever makes you unhappy. You have to go on that journey. You have to go on that journey with compassion and get rid of that judgment. And it's a spiritual journey. However you want to slice it. It's that place where you will find more alignment with yourself. And as Carole was sharing with me earlier on, is where you are accepting just the way that you are, that you're okay with just being you and being okay without any support, that you become your own support team, that you don't need anyone's approval. Now, the truth is that we do like people's approval, but let's get it from the people that are in alignment with us.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to get approval from everyone. So let's just hang around the people that are more like us. And then here's that key, that important key for all of us to remember, is that the people you hang around with is the people that is a person that you become. And so you want to be very selective, or carefully selective, if you will, with who you do get to hang around with. And my thing is you find people that are better than yourself that you can learn from and just expand your life.
Yeah, and what I would add to that as well, because I've sometimes seen quotes around that whole concept, and I completely agree with it. Like even in the setting of this trip, it's like-minded individuals. Everybody was in it essentially with a common theme of wanting to better themselves or wanting to just dive deeper into their own journey. And you get to feel that support, that feeling of family, that feeling of connection, that feeling of I'm seen, they understand me, so on and so forth. But when we come back into life, then we get placed into situations where the group of people we are around are not necessarily people we would choose. And that's okay too, because we strengthen ourselves with those that are like-minded and those that get us and understand. And then we go into the world and we shine our light, because if we just confined or restricted ourselves to stay just amongst us with the people that feel the same way and live similar ways, then we're not spreading the love that we have available to share with others. And I've had so many people come into my life and be that for me. And so we get to be that for others as well. So that's what I love about these transformational trips, is like to be able to take something so that brings you on such a high, but then apply it to life. Like just take it back home and recognize that it's not something you just feel if you're in Thailand or in Peru, or it isn't. Like we can bring that feeling and that experience back home with us in every single moment, in the mundane of every day. And that's the power of those trips. If we just feel it on the trip and then that's where it stays, then okay, it was great, but you won't feel it again until you sign up for the next trip. And I see it differently. Like when I've done these trips, it's like I'm gifting the people in my life as well. Like not everybody can. So when I go, I come back and I get to see the transformation in those that were left behind, just by the fact that I chose to go. So it's powerful in that way. It's not limited to just those that are traveling or experiencing that. Is like we all get, and for you as well, like when you step into your own creative genius, it's like that's a transformation every time you step into the work that you love to do. And then that shines forward in other settings where maybe others are not choosing to live their life authentically like that, and you get to make a difference. Or were you going to say something?
Yeah. How many trips have you done altogether?
It's been varying trips. Like this one, I couldn't compare to the others. The others were more of training that I was doing with a specific group. But I think there's about 6 that I could say that have been along that line. But this one was very unique in a lot of ways. It was a huge game changer for me.
Yeah, this one was really unique in that sense because the very intention was to have us, what I call, create a collaborative experience or a generative collaboration, where as all of us are coaches in one form or another, and really having that opportunity to meet people that you would never otherwise meet, and which is great. And you know, one of our guests next week, by the way, is Dr. Janet Smith Warfield. And what was interesting was I didn't immediately connect with her at the time. And, you know, on the trip, I was, you know, there's so many people, so you don't really get to connect with all of them. And I've had a delightful conversation with her yesterday. It's like, wow, you know what? Too bad we didn't talk more during the trip. And that's the beauty of it. You get to meet people that you otherwise wouldn't meet. You create long-lasting friendships, but more importantly, you get to appreciate other people's worldview and can learn from them. And that's what also this whole platform, Prescription for Your Transformation, really is all about, is just hearing, you know, new conversations, new voices, real conversations and real voices about what's true for that particular person, that particular group. And like I said, you know, you may not agree with it, you may not like it, but some of them you will, and it will give you that opportunity to discover something that you didn't know before that makes all the difference. And that's true of my life. It's sort of like I used to say in the early on of the series of this program is, do you want to be the accidental tourist in your life, just bumping into, you know, the magnificence of it? Or do you really want to be that guided tour guide, if you will, discovering all the wealth and wonders out there for you? I mean, are you just going to sit passively, you know, in life, you know, waiting to see what happens, or just, you know, being unconscious? Or do you want to end your life on, and this is the rocking chair, you know, test, is at the end of life in your rocking chair, realize, you know what, I've had an incredible life. I've done all the things. I have no regrets. I've missed nothing out. And, you know, I've grown so much and I've contributed so much. And so that's why I appreciate, you know, today, Carole, with the wealth of your insights. And before I step into the last part, which is finding out more about you, Carole, as to what it is that you do and how people can find you and what kind of programs you have, I would love to ask our producers here today, what are your takeaways today? What is something that you really enjoyed or liked, and if you want to share that with us?
My takeaway would be that you can learn something from everyone, whether it's a past experience, a story, their view of the world. Everyone has a story to tell, and you can learn something from that, which can better improve yourself and your own uniqueness.
Absolutely.
I'd have to second that, because if we say the same thing, if we hadn't done the show today, then we wouldn't have met Carole, and she wouldn't have been able to tell us all these great things. And I think that really just kind of plays along with the whole theme of life, and that you have to make it your own. And we were talking the other day about kind of that mindset of not wanting to go to the grave with all these regrets and stuff. And one thing that our mentor always says is that the graveyard is the richest place, because so many people don't do that for themselves. And I think that's my takeaway, that I don't want that to happen to me or to anyone.
It's interesting. You were just saying stories. I mean, the way that I portray a graveyard is, a graveyard is just all the stories that people have, stories of lives that were never told and were never heard. And again, that's also what this platform is. And I'm so grateful for you two, by the way, and also for Carole and her stories and her insights. And so as we kind of wrap up, I think we have about 5 minutes left. I don't know if you've given me that signal yet. But so Carole, you're a coach. And so tell us a little bit about your program and how people can actually find you. And remember that my emotional currency is that people get to find you, you get to coach them, and they get to change your lives. In turn, your life gets to be changed as well.
Yeah, it's an ever-evolving world for me. Certainly after this trip, there's been a huge amount of changes. In the near future, there's going to be talk of actually facilitating. I've had quite a few people approach me, when are you going to be organizing trips like similar to that, and in my own unique way of bringing it forward. And so that's something I'm really excited about. I think that it's a great space to be able to remove yourself from everyday life and to be away from the density, the responsibilities, the distractions, and certainly even on our trip, how we were for those 4 days with the tribe, completely disconnected from the internet, from phone service. It was fascinating to watch just how all of us reacted in our own unique ways when we're also plugged in, right? So that's one aspect. People can find me at www.expandingforward.com. That's where all my information is for connecting with me for a free discovery session. If people want to just get a feel if we'd work well together, and any area of their life they feel like they're stuck, or they just know that they could expand in, and we work together, and it's just one-on-one is very accelerated, so we move through stuff quickly. And so that's one way. And on Facebook, same thing, /expanding forward. And so, yeah, a few things on the go, creating new programs and reaching out to more on a global level. So I'm excited about that.
And it's my understanding that you're planning on a humanitarian trip in the near future?
Yes, we're doing some work in Nicaragua, and we'll have more information about that in the next few months, and how people can participate in that as well. So lots of fun stuff. But yeah, I'm excited to even have my older kids be a part of that world as well. That'll be great. So.
Well, I certainly appreciate you tonight, and we all do, by the way, and anybody listening in, and anybody on Facebook, happy to hear your comments, your feedbacks, and anyone who actually has the desire to be interviewed on Facebook Live, let us know. We're actually expanding the process where we'll simulcast on YouTube and other platforms. Just some technological difficulties to get that all working in order. But I'm Prescription for Your Transformation, Real People, Real Conversations, and Real Success. And my platform here really is about finding that way to tap into your authentic genius and living the life that you desire. I just feel that we live in an intelligent universe. Nothing happens by random. And all we have to do is tap into that brain intelligence, the body intelligence, as well as that energy intelligence. And when we talk about the brain, it's all the stuff that we're talking about here. And it's all those, those solutions that, many people out there know. And it's not just about listening to the grand masters, as I like to call it. And those are the Robbins, the Carnegies, the Brunsons, and all these amazing people out there that are extremely well gifted in so many ways. But most of us are not like that. Most of us, need different conversations and different solutions. So with that, I'd like to sign off, but giving Carole just about 20 seconds of the final words.
Final words is just thank you for having me on today. It was a pleasure meeting the two of you as well. And let's just all continue to just live a life more filled with compassion, and let's just eliminate judgment because it just doesn't belong. So thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I'm Dr. Bart Rademaker once again, and tomorrow I'll be back on Facebook Live. Going to try out something new. My hair is getting a little long, and so I'm going to work with my hairstylist and interview him at the same time. What style means and how that really affects us in our own self-esteem and the way that we live. So once again, thanks very much, and we will be back.
Thanks for listening to Dr. Rademaker's Prescription for Transformation. Join Dr. Bart Rademaker live right here on Radio Star Worldwide each week, or on demand 24/7.
Great, guys. Wonderful. Thank you. Can you still hear us?
I can hear you. I don't know if they can.
Okay. So if you guys can connect with me after the show or tomorrow, just so we can wrap it up and get your feedback and how we get to move forward. Is that cool?
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't hear the first part you said because I had my mic down. So what did you say?
No, we'd love to connect with both of you today or tomorrow, whatever's easier. Just send me a text. You guys have my number, hopefully, or get that from Ed. And then we can sort of just figure out how we can plan and move forward. Is that cool?
Yeah,
Sure.
that's perfectly good. That sounds good to me.
And really loved your contribution, guys. It's that's what makes this show, and it's a little different than the other shows, I'm sure. But really love your participation and your insights. And
it's a lot of fun, and I learned a lot too.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, cool. So talk to you guys soon.
All right, we'll be in touch.
Nice meeting you.
Bye, Carole. See you later.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.